Okay, so this is our third session, as you're aware. Can we have the second slide up? There's a bit of a... there you go.
Oh, okay.
You could see past it.
Some of us aren't tall.
All right. That's not a very good look, is it? Not very professional. Anyway, there's a bit of a summary there. Sorry, it's a bit small. If you don't have good eyes and don't have your glasses on, there's spare seats down the front. Bit of a summary of where we've been so far. We've had two sessions. In the first session, we were looking at listening to someone else in pastoral care, and I made the point that listening to someone else in pastoral care is, well, I'm presenting to you a methodology which is probably very different from what you've been used to, and that is you're not trying to achieve something with the person, you are trying to uncover what God is already doing in the person. And that disposition just leads to this endless interest in what is going on in the other person. Not giving advice, but just asking what's going on. Asking until we discover what God is doing to bring new life to that person. Then the second session was about what I call attention to experience, ATE, and that is an equivalent practice of listening to yourself. And I made the point that when we write our experience down, when we describe our experience in writing, what that does is that gives us the capacity to be both the speaker and the listener at the same time. Now both of these ways of listening are basically the same thing in two different modes. It's the same skill, the same practice, and from now on, today and in our next session, I'm basically talking about both of those things together. Listening to someone else in a pastoral care relationship, or listening to yourself in individual reflection and prayer before God. Exactly the same thing happens, and I may have said in the previous session, but I'm going to really emphasize now, if you are going to be good at this, people, you need to do both. You cannot listen well to someone else unless you can listen well to yourself. Don't kid yourself, don't fool yourself. You will not be a good listener with other people unless you also learn to listen well to yourself. Similarly, the practice of listening to others, Jesus says what you give out is what you receive. The practice of listening to others helps to guide your practice of listening to yourself. The other thing to say about both of these modes of listening is that in both cases, you, the listener, are a sacramental, small s sacrament, sacramental representation of the compassionate love of God for the person you're listening to. Now, when we're doing one-to-one pastoral care and you're listening to another person, that's reasonably well understood, isn't it? That you are representing the compassion of God if you listen to this person, if you're open to what they're saying, if you sit with them in what they're saying, that you can be a minister of God's love to that person, right? Yeah, we understand that's how Christian ministry works. But in exactly the same way, we need to know that if that person is you, then you are ministering in a sacramental way the love of God to you. This is an incredibly powerful truth. The love of God can be tangibly available to you every day of your life. I'm talking tangibly, people, not off in some far distant heaven which occasionally breaks through into our lives. That's not how the Christian life is meant to be. Jesus came and the heavens opened. God is tangibly present in the world, and this is a very concrete way in which we can choose to be in touch with that presence of God to us. You are the minister of God's love to yourself. Whenever you want to be. It's amazing. But it's also essential for our ministry of listening. If we are going to listen well to others, we have to listen well to ourselves. In both of these ways of listening, as well as ministering the love of God to the person you're listening to, even if it's yourself, the key thing that we're trying to do is uncover the truth of what is going on, because we believe that God is already there doing his business. So you're not trying to add something in, you're trying to draw something out. And this is why when we listen, we do not censor or filter. We don't criticize or correct. We don't try to give advice. We just listen for the movements of the Spirit, and then we home in on that and ask about that until we find what God is doing. Okay. Next slide, please, Tom. Now, in the last session, I talked about how I gave a methodology for listening to ourselves, listening to yourself. It's the same thing when you listen to the other person. And I gave a list of, well, basically this list, this is slightly different from the way I expressed it then, but a list of the kinds of things you're asking about. You're asking yourself or the other person, yourself if you're listening to yourself, or the other person in pastoral care, about what are their thoughts, what's going on in the mind, what is going on in your feelings, what is going on in your body, what is it making you want to do. Now, that might seem like this kind of random, strange list of things, but really if you look at that, what you're going to see is basically every aspect of the human person. Can you see that? Mind, will, feeling, body, and relationships. That's not a bad breakdown of what a human person is, huh? All this is seeking to do, all these, when we say write down what's going on in your emotion, or write down what's happening in your memory, or when you ask the person, what are you feeling there? What are you thinking there? What's happening in your body there? Where is that in your body? What does it make you want to do? When you ask these questions, all you're doing is seeking to uncover every part of the person's experience. Our experiences, what happens in our lives, whether they're wonderful experiences of the grace of God or they're problems and things that we're struggling with, they impact on us at all of these levels. Mind, body, feeling, will, relationships. And so by asking about all of these things, what we're trying to do is uncover every aspect of what's going on in the person to see where God might be at work and to bring compassion to that experience by asking about it. All right. Now, what I've suggested as you are starting out on this kind of journey, gosh, it's hard to listen to me when you've got a baby in front of you, isn't it? So much cuter than me. All right.
You're pretty cute, Dave.
Oh, thank you, Tim. That's what I was looking for. Any of the girls want to say that? That'd be more welcome. All right. Okay, where was I? What I've suggested to you as we're starting out on this journey of listening is that we actually go through all of those things, ask about all of those things. What we're doing there is seeking to learn to be sensitive to each of those parts of our experience. Most of us are quite insensitive to some of those aspects of our experience. You might be a feeling person, you might be a head person. A lot of us are quite out of touch with what's going on in our bodies. You know, a lot of us filter out what our experiences make us want to do because we think that that's somehow sinful or inappropriate. My experience makes me want to punch so-and-so in the face, but I'm not aware of that because that's being bad, isn't it? So I filter that out of my experience. So I have to ask deliberately about each of these aspects to help me get in touch with them. But it's a bit artificial. In practice, of course, you're not going, like when you're talking to somebody, you're not sort of saying, okay, what's going on in your emotion, in your imagination? What's going on in your memory? What's going on in your beliefs? You know, I've got this list in front of me. You're not doing it like that, are you? No, okay. It's more, we'll leave that slide up. It's more like this. All right, here's an experience that I want to pay attention to. And okay, let's make the black arrow is paying attention to this experience. Okay? Now, while I'm paying attention to this experience, I'm asking about imagination, memory, beliefs, judgments, emotions. Where is it in your body? What does it make you want to do? How does it make you feel? Does it make you feel alone, or you feel like you're, you know, in relationship with God? And you know, I'm just asking about all of this. But as soon as I'm asking about all of those things, when something grabs me, I don't need to go on and ask about all the other things. When something grabs me, say, oh, what is that feeling? That's really interesting. That feeling is a new experience for us now to pay attention to. You get that? I'm going through, I'm exploring all the aspects of the experience, and then when something happens and you think, oh, that's interesting, that's a new experience for me to start to ask about. I know this is a little bit abstract, but it's the best we can do in the time available. This new experience, even if it's just a feeling, it has attached to it and with it all of that. It has beliefs, it has images, it has bodily experience, it has an inclination to respond in a certain way. It has all of those things in it. And so I then start to ask all those questions about this feeling that we've uncovered. But again, I'm not going to go through that whole list. As soon as we say, oh, what's that going on in your body? And, you know, and something comes out. It might be a memory appears. And you think, oh, gee, that's really interesting. That sounds like that might be significant. Well, that memory is a new experience, which I now turn to and start to pay attention to. Again, asking all these questions, because that memory will have in it all of these things: images, beliefs, judgments, emotions, a number of different emotions. You get the picture, don't you? So you're following this kind of... And that's it. It's kind of like how a conversation works, doesn't it? Yeah? And the conversation with yourself as well. Eventually, what's going to happen is, bingo! You find what you're looking for. You find what you're looking for. You find what the grace of God is trying to bring to you or to the other person in this particular situation. Now, look, this process of getting to what you're looking for, it might happen in one session of listening to yourself or the other person, or it might take 5 sessions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or it might take 5 years or 15 years. If what we really need to uncover, like Eric, my experience today has roots in wounds and false beliefs that go right back to the very core of my existence. And the really deep stuff that goes back to my early childhood, that's going to take years to really get to. How do you feel about that? Tired. We can, sorry?
I'd rather the magic.
You're rather the magic. Okay, good, yes. There is some magic at each point on the way. But the really critical thing to understand is that if this process of reaching, the truth that sets us free, if that takes 15 years, what's really important for us to understand is that it's not all about getting to the end point. You are ministering the compassionate love of God to the person you are listening to already, from the beginning. That compassion, you might not necessarily feel the compassion all the time. It does emerge from time to time. You might not always be aware consciously that this is a sacramental ministry of God's love to the person or to yourself, but that is the truth. That is what's happening. So it's not like this whole thing is not of much value until you get to the end. You see? Don't feel like it all depends on getting to the end. At every step along the way, this is an exercise in us being the love of God for someone else or for ourselves. And it's of immense value for that. Even if you don't get to the bingo, woohoo! That's what I was looking for. Having said that, do not think that this is rare or unusual. I would say that, 50% of my sessions with myself or someone else, there's a, well, gosh, we find what we're looking for. Can we have the next slide, Tom? So, finding what we're looking for, what might it be? What might this woohoo kind of revelation of grace be? The possibilities are virtually endless and infinite. So I've got a bit of a list up there of the kind of things that can happen. We can find compassion, feel compassion. Compassion is healing. If we get in touch with compassion in our experience, you know that experience, don't you? Of really feeling like somebody's with you in what you're going through. What you're going through doesn't even need to change, but you already feel okay about it because you don't feel alone anymore. Yeah? Clarity. This can be an experience of, oh, now I see what's going on. Now I know what to do. Now I know how to respond. I was so confused before. Now I've got it. It can be detachment. It can be, all right, this situation's still going on, but I kind of feel free about it now. It's okay. It's all right. Acceptance, similarly. I accept this experience. So there's still pain there, but this is, part of the Christian way of carrying the cross. There's still pain there, but I am okay with it. And not because I'm telling myself I'm okay with it. Like I really, really am okay with it. That it's miraculous. I don't know how that happened. I'm still feeling this pain, but I'm okay with it. Relief. The sort of, gosh, it's good to get that out. The courage. I've got this thing that I'm facing and I feel so powerless and weak and I don't know what to do. But one of the things that can be uncovered is this strength. I know what to do and I'm got energy and power to do it now. And again, that sounds like what we so often exhort each other to, doesn't it? And exhort ourselves to. I'm not talking about turning it on. I'm talking about discovering this power that God has put within you. There it is. And okay. And you can see the body language in yourself or the other person. I'm right now. I'm going to do this. And I'm not turning that on. I'm not making it up. It was there in me and I've found it. I found it. A new perspective where the thing seemed like it was such a problem, but now, or contrition if there was sin in it. And again, we're not talking about turning on repentance. I'm talking about contrition is the change that comes of itself. God-given grace comes naturally and easily. We're talking about finding it. That list could go on and on and on, and there's more. The really critical thing to understand when we're doing this is you cannot predict what the answer is going to be. If you, as the listener, start to think that you know what the answer should be, what you start doing is giving advice and censoring and pushing the person, and your answer may not be God's answer. I've got to tell you people, I've been doing this hours every day for 15 years, and it still surprises me every time. Every time. It's not like when the truth and the answer and the healing reveals itself, it's not like it's not something I've seen, haven't seen. It's not like something I haven't seen before most times. But it's always surprising because it's kind of, I thought it was going to be that, but it's that. I thought it was going to be that, but it's that. We've got to be very humble about just this endless openness. I'm looking for it. I'm waiting for it. I'm hoping for it. I'm trusting. And I'm detached as I'm listening because I cannot make it happen. I tell you what, people, that's painful. Do you know this is painful? As a listener, you've got to endure a lot of pain, whether you're listening to yourself or the other person, because you've got to sit with this powerlessness. And you can be sitting in this crap, which is awful, just waiting for something to emerge, and the temptation to try and fix it or get away from it is almost overpowering. You just, like I'm really good at this and I've been doing it for years, but it's still kind of like, so often it's just this agonizing, oh my goodness, I've got no idea what's going on here. I do not know where this is going. I'm starting to feel hopeless. And then, bingo, there it is, woo! Happens over and over again, honestly. It's an amazing thing. All right. Now, when we find what we're looking for, whatever it is that we've been dealing with is healed, resolved. It's okay. It's genuinely okay, not turning it on. If at the end of your session you feel like maybe something's happened, but I still don't feel quite right about it, I still, still not happy about it. I mean, something happened, yeah, and that was good, but well, it just means you're at some point along the journey, but there's more to go. There's further to go. It needs more attention. When you reach the end of the process, there's no sense of this is, still a problem for me. God's answers are not stingy. God's responses are not stingy or limited. He's talking about the total transformation of our whole self, which is why it might take 20 years to get there, okay? We're not talking about putting a band-aid on your psychological problems. We're talking about transforming you into the image of the living God. So it might take 20 years, mightn't it? Yeah, it might take 50.
And then you can say 10 minutes after he's dead.
Yeah, that's right. Do I have 60? Anybody? 70? Anybody? 80 to the person in the corner. Right. All right. Next slide, please, Tom. Now, of course, you're probably already fully aware of this without me saying it, but of course, the process of getting to, what God is doing is not actually this straightforward kind of, path to glory. It's a very complicated, messy one. So you get to here, and then something here strikes you, and you start looking at this, and, so an image. And you think, well, that's an interesting image in your mind. Let's have a look at that. Let's have a look at the thoughts and the feelings and the desires and the body experience with that image. You start talking about it, and you start to think, this is not going on anywhere. Happens all the time. Go back to square one. And then start going through the thoughts and the feelings there again until you find something else. Does that sort of make sense? At every step in the way, you're going to go off to here, and then you're going to go to here, and then you're going to think, oh my goodness, this is like this. Both of us, me and the other person, are just not finding this terribly interesting. Doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Okay, maybe we'll backtrack to here. We'll backtrack to here. So in practice, we end up on this journey of, going all over the place and back, and then, sometimes we start looking at a thing and find that it's just bringing you down. It's just making you depressed and miserable and confused. Well, that's a sign that that's probably not what we should be looking at the moment. So, let's go back to an earlier point in the conversation where it did seem evident that God was doing something, and start paying attention again. Oh, where am I going? But it's like that. It's all over the place. It's messy. It's trial and error. Okay, I kind of conflated two things at once here. The slide, what is going to be I said you're looking at an experience and something grabs you or strikes you, and then you say, okay, I'm going to look at that. Okay? Now, what do I mean when I say something grabs you or strikes you? Could be any one of these kinds of things. It could just be, oh, that's really interesting. Or you could see in the other person, if you're listening to someone else rather than yourself, that person seems really interested in that. You can see from their body language. or from the energy in the way they're talking, that they're really interested. So you ask them about that. It might be a feeling of attraction that you're feeling in yourself or you can see in the other person. It might be while you're listening, you notice in the other person's body language or in yourself, you notice an affective response, like just something sparks. Oh, what's that? Tell me more about that. The repetition is a really good one to look out for when you're listening to someone. Very often when I'm listening to somebody, I'll notice that they'll say something 3-4 times, use the same word or come back to the same thing. It's like they're going round in circles, coming back to the same thing. And it might not be something that I found the least bit interesting or attractive, so I didn't ask them about it when they said it the first time or the second time. But when I hear it the third time, I think, that's important to you for some reason. Tell me about that. What's going on there? Similarly, when you're listening to yourself, if a particular thought keeps coming back to your mind, you know, when you're listening, you've got something goes through your head, you think, oh, that's nothing. But then it comes back again. You think, oh, no, that's nothing. And then it comes back again. You think, oh, all right, hold on, something going on here. That's a very useful trigger to, when you're listening, either to yourself or someone else, to say, there's something going on there. If there's repetition that needs attention. Certainly when you're listening and you see the person's body language shift. Think, oh, what happened there? What happened in you? Like I noticed that you suddenly slumped. Or I noticed that you did that with your fist. You know, what's that mean? What are you expressing? What is that? Ask the person, what's that gesture expressing? The person will say, I didn't even know I was doing it. We'll say, that's all right. That's how it works. We're talking about uncovering what's inside that you didn't know was there. So what does that mean? Or I notice that you've started smiling now, whereas you were frowning before. What's happened in you? So at each of these points, what's happening is one of those things on the list. You see that? At each point, there's something that interested me, or something that attracted you, or something that you repeated, or something that I noticed in your body language. Okay, now we're going to look at that one. But, of course, 3 times out of 4, it's going to be a false alarm. And you're going to end up in some dead corner and you're going to have to come back. So the final thing that I've said there on that slide is it's about a process of discernment. The more you do it, the better you get at discerning which of these signs is a sign of God's movement, the Holy Spirit's leading us on the path to where He wants us to go, and which of these signs is not. It's an extremely subtle process. And even when you're expert, you're going to take wrong turns over and over again and have to go back. Go back to an earlier part of the exercise when, I could tell that something was happening there, but maybe as I tried to explore what was happening there, I took a wrong turn somewhere. So let's go back to there and have a look at that again and see what else is in that. Right, so the first part of this exercise, what we're going to do is break up into 3s and do a listening exercise. It's a listening exercise called triads. I don't want that up there yet though, Tom. No, I'll up it in a minute. First thing I want you to do is make a self-assessment. Every person in the room, just in your head, although I am going to ask you, so be warned. In your head, make a self-assessment of how you are going with this material, not just today, but the previous 2 sessions. So I want you to give yourself a number between 1 and 10. 10 means totally on top of it. I've been practicing this and finding it fruitful, and I'm understanding basically everything that Father Tony is saying. That's 10. 1 means not that interested in this. I'm only here because I'm a member of the community and I'm not going to practice it and haven't been, it's stimulating and interesting, but 5 might mean interesting, been trying it a bit, doesn't work for me most of the time, but I can see there's something good in it. Is that okay? Give yourself a number from 1 to 10. Please be honest, do not inflate your ability, but don't downplay it either, all right?
So it's scoring the ability or our interest?
It's both. It will be part ability or interest. It's both. It's probably more ability than interest at this stage because it's a practical exercise and I'm trying to judge. I'm going to need to... No, shut up, Tony. Give yourself a number. Doesn't matter if, doesn't have to be perfect, but try and be honest and realistic. Everyone got a number? Yes? You sure? Yeah. Okay. Now look, please, this is not an exercise in pride or humiliation or anything, okay? But please, okay. If you gave yourself a number 6 or higher, can you put your hand up, please? Okay. We might have to make it, that's too many. I might have to make it 7 or higher. If you gave yourself a number 7 or higher, can you put your hand up? Okay. What you people who just had your name up for 7 or higher, you are going, okay. We're going to do an exercise called triads. I need to divide you into 3 groups. Each triad is going to have a speaker, a listener, and a supervisor. Now that's what these numbers are for. If your number was 7 or higher, you're a supervisor, okay? And that's the hardest job. Aren't you glad you gave yourself a good number? All right. Can I get the supervisors, please, to stand up? Okay. Now, if you gave yourself a number... Actually, no, sit down again just for a sec. I'll get you up again in a minute. Sorry, this is messy. It's hard to know how to do this. If you gave yourself a number from 3 to 6, can you put your hand up, please? Okay, again, possibly slightly too many. Can we make it 4 to 6? Hand up if you're 4 to 6. Okay. Right. If you're a supervisor, can you stand up, please? If you gave yourself a number 4 to 6, can you go and attach yourself to somebody, to a supervisor? Go and stand with them. 1 each. So we now have a number of pairs standing up, right? Everybody is in a pair? Right, if you're not in a pair, can you stand up and go and attach yourself to one of those pairs? Everyone. Everyone, all the 1s, 2s and 3s. Okay. The person who is the speaker, please choose an experience that you are going to share with and speak about to the listener. Now, it has to be a real experience. You're not making something up. This process doesn't work role-playing. It's not role-playing. It's got to be a real experience. But I encourage you, don't pick an experience unless you're very brave. and you really trust the two people that you're with. Don't pick an experience that's very vulnerable or painful, or, you know, something that you're willing to explore everything that's going on in that experience with your triad. So that's your job, to speak about, to share about a particular experience, a real thing in your life. It might be positive, it might be negative, so it might be a problem, or it might be a grace or a gift, something that, you know, you feel the need to share about. As speakers, you can be thinking about what that is going to be over the next couple of minutes while I instruct the listeners and the supervisors. Clear enough? Just speakers, when you're sharing, you're doing your best to be speaking honestly about what's going on. No pretending, no making yourself look better than you are. No censoring. Listeners, now your role is to practice listening in a pastoral care style of way, in the way that I've been teaching you, to the speaker. Listeners, so no advice giving. Listen to what the person has to say about the experience. Ask them about what's going on inside them, their feelings, their thoughts, their bodily experience, even if you feel a bit silly and awkward asking those questions. And then as you're asking, you're waiting for something to spark your interest, something that grabs you, or something that the other person repeats, or something that causes an affective response, all the stuff I've been talking about, right? And ask them to share about that, and then follow that path, seeking what's going on. Now, you're only going to have a bit over 10 minutes, so you're not going to get very far down the process. All right? No advice giving, listeners. No censoring, speakers. Supervisors. Yours is the most difficult job. First of all, you are the timekeeper. What we're going to have is 2 10-minute, the exercise is in 2 10-minute parts. Firstly, the speaker will share with the listener for 10 minutes. And supervisor, it's your job just simply to sit there, listen, observe, and keep time. Don't intervene in any way. But I encourage you to be noticing, supervisor, as you are observing what is happening. If you don't have a pen and paper, come and take some. Take some notes as you're listening. Notice, this is for the supervisor, okay? Notice what goes on in the conversation. Try to notice where the listener seems to be having trouble, where perhaps the listener misses a cue that the speaker gives. You getting it, supervisors? If the listener takes the conversation off in a direction that seems unhelpful, or not the direction that you would have taken it, supervisor, as you're noting these things as you go along, then at the end of the first 10-minute listening session, what you do is you select one of those moments in the conversation where you feel like the conversation went off track, or the listener was struggling, or, you know, something like that, or you think something really interesting happened. And then your job is to listen to the listener. You want to, supervisor, you want to get the listener to speak about his or her experience of what happened in that moment. You got it? You've got the first 10-minute session. There'll be a number of times in that 10-minute session where you think, that's not what I would have asked, and that doesn't look like it was helpful, or there seems to have been a snag there or a problem. So, supervisor, ask the listener, what happened there? What was your experience there? And it's exactly the same listening process. What was happening in your feelings? This is what you're asking the listener. what was happening in your feelings, what was happening in your thoughts, what was happening in your body, what was happening in your imagination, to seek to uncover in the listener what was happening in his or her experience as he or she was listening. Does it make sense? All right. Supervisors, if you need a pencil and paper, come up and get one. Spread out as much as you can. Go into the next room, go into the corridor. It's a nice day, go outside. Take your chairs with you. We're all just about back. All right, folks, just finishing up very quickly. I just want to say a couple of words over the next 2 minutes about dealing with the difficulties that we encounter when we're practicing this listening process. The first thing is what I already said earlier in this session. Please understand that even if you feel like you're getting nowhere, if you are listening and not criticising, you are bringing the love of God to that person or to yourself. So remember that. If you're starting to feel discouraged, this is not getting anywhere. I'm not finding what I'm looking for. Secondly, what I call snags, which I haven't referred to in this session, but I think I did refer to at least in the first session. When you're listening to somebody, it happens all the time that something that the person says triggers something in yourself. Now that can be helpful if there's a connection, but it also can be a problem where you are suddenly caught in the need to deal with what is triggered in yourself. It actually isn't about the other person anymore. You get caught in it. And what happens unconsciously is you start to ask the other person questions that are secretly and unconsciously designed to help you work through what you're dealing with. That happens all the time. Now, those snags, there's two things to do with those. Firstly, take the snag to your private attention to experience. What happened there? That thing that was triggered in me, what was going on? What were the feelings? What were the thoughts? What was going on in my mind? What was going on in my body? To seek to bring God's compassionate love and healing to that snag, whatever it was. So that next time that comes up in a listening session, you don't get snagged by it. Got it? Because you've done the work on your own thing, now you're free to stay with the person. Similarly, you can take that snag to your pastoral care. If your pastoral carer is someone who's trying to practice this, are you following? Yeah. Something's been triggered in you while you're listening and you can't cope with it. Like say for example, once I was listening to somebody talk about an addictive pattern and I got really caught in reactions that were associated with an addictive pattern that was in my life at that time. It was really hard to listen to the other person. So I had to take that reaction to my personal attention to experience or to my ministry supervisor to work through that so that next time that comes up, I can stay with the person I'm listening to. Next, often when we encounter difficulties listening, whether we're listening to someone else or to ourselves, what we need to do is simply pay attention to the difficulty. Right, let's get this back here. You're trying to pay attention to this and you find something is in the way, you can't get there. It might be fear, it might be anger, it even though it seems important, you just find you can't talk about it, whatever it is. Instead, you then stop trying to pay attention to that and you pay attention to the difficulty, whatever it is that's getting in the way. All right, I can't spend more time on that now. I'll spend more time on that next time. But if you have the attention to experience exercise from last time, and it's attached to the video of the talk I gave last time, or I've got multiple copies and you can come and get it. The second last point on that list talks about dealing with resistance. So that's a key thing to do when you're encountering difficulties in your listening, either to yourself or to someone else. Lastly, there's a particular trick which is almost miraculous for dealing with difficulties, which I'm going to leave you hanging with. Till next time. Because it would simply take too long to express now. But that's to give you hope. There is more, people. If you're finding it difficult, like when I talk about this, like it really is quite marvellous, but I could not hey, I've gone 10 minutes over time anyway. I could not squeeze it into this session. So forgive me, all right? But I want you to know it's there. Next session is 30th of November. And so we're finished now, but I want to do 3 things. Firstly, to say, if anybody wants a copy of the Attention to Experience exercise, which I gave last time, multiple copies here, you can come and get them. Also, I have compiled a list of typical questions to ask when you are listening to somebody. Now, it's impossible to make this systematic. It's as messy as sin. Like, it's all over the place. It's impossible to make it systematic, but you might find it helpful, a list of suggested questions to ask. So that's there too, if you want it. Messy, as I said, yes. And second last, can I get the pads and pencils back, please? And last thing, we're finishing now, but after we finish, as many of the supervisors as possible, would you come and talk to me just to give me a sense of how those sessions went? Don't have time to do that in the big group. And if you need to get away, that's fine. But if I can get half a dozen of the supervisors up here just to give me a bit of feedback, that'd be very helpful. That's it. I hope you're exhausted because I am.